and that's why I now believe Final Fantasy X is the best game in the Final Fantasy franchise. Now, I'm actually just joking, but I will say I do hold this game much higher than I actually did before I started my current playthrough of it. I rated the game the 5th best game in the franchise when I made a video talking about it last year, and I think now I would probably move it up to 4th place. I just think that, 6, 9, and 7 are 3 games that I don't know, I don't view as being movable, but I will say I think there is so much charm to Final Fantasy X that I've really kind of just fell in love with as I've started this current playthrough. When I originally rated it 5th, that was based on solely really just my experiences and memories playing it as a kid with my friends, and also the fact that I'm just very aware of how important and influential this is for JRPGs and just JRPG history in general. 2 years ago, or nearly 2 years ago I should say, in October of 2024, I decided to hop back into the game when I saw it was just $9.99, I'm talking the 10 and 10-2 bundle on the PS Store. I ended up dropping it about 8 to 10 hours into my run, and I think a lot of it was just JRPG fatigue from games that I had been playing that previous summer, and also just the fact that I didn't hop into this game because I really wanted to, in all honesty. It was because I wanted to wait about a month to see if Metaphor ReFantazio, which had just dropped at that time, would get some kind of Black Friday or Cyber Monday discount. But after that 8 to 10 hours of playing this, I said, you know what, I'm just going to pick up Metaphor, and I'm happy I did, but I'm very upset that I went into Final Fantasy X and replaying that game in 2024 with the intention that I had. Because for me, I just felt like I should have went into it when I actually wanted to play it, not when I was forcing myself. And I think that really did kind of hinder my experience, and that's why it's taken me so long to try and hop back into it once again. But I've been replaying it recently, and I'm so glad that I've been doing that. As I mentioned in my last video, the game launching on the Switch 2 has definitely brought renewed interest in me wanting to play it. But I do own the game 3 times already. I purchased it 3 times, and I felt like for me, since I have it on the PS4, and I could play it via backwards compatible play on the PS5, I have it on PC, and I also have the original copy for the PS2, that I should go back and play one of those versions. And I decided to go back and play it on the OG PS2 hardware and get the full original experience for the game that way. Playing through the original version of the game on the PS2 has been extremely charming for me though. I've been super immersed into it, and I've absolutely loved it so far on this current playthrough that I'm on. I spoke about this in another video, but I do believe that the port that we got for the PS4 that, like I said, can be played backwards compatibly with the PS5 is just, I think the art and some of the textures are pretty terrible, and it feels kind of lifeless. And I think for me, I wanted to get that full immersive experience and just play the original way, because like I said, I think the textures are so much better somehow on a 25-year-old PS2 game opposed to a port that we got that's in high definition. Like I said, the original game is still extremely charming, and I do believe that you should play it on the original hardware and play the PS2 version if you want the most immersive experience, especially if you still have a CRT that you can hook the console up to, or if you could find a CRT TV cheap on Facebook Marketplace or elsewhere. As someone whose favorite Final Fantasy game is 9, I love how silly and stupid some of the moments can be in that game, and it really does matter with how heavy that story can be. It's super important to have comedic relief moments when Final Fantasy IX is touching on grief, free will, self-identity, and mortality. And honestly, you could say the same thing about Final Fantasy X and their cartoonish or silly moments that you see from Tidus that really do provide the comedic relief in this game, especially with Final Fantasy X being an extremely profound critique of religion. Now, I do want to just let you know that you can skip ahead to the next section, as there will be story element spoilers, because I do want to talk about the story and said critique of religion that you do get in this game. Now, typically all great art is going to have some kind of allegory in the story or some kind of underlying message that you're trying to get across. And if not, then I kind of have to question why you're even creating art in the first place. And simply put, Final Fantasy X is a great piece of art, which of course is why it has a very important and profound underlying message and critique of religion, like I said. And with JRPGs, critiques of religion are something that have always been present in these games. Xenogears was doing it before Final Fantasy X, and the Xenoblade series has been doing it after the release of Final Fantasy X. Seeing the corruption of the Maesters and how they're trying to create this religion's illusion of salvation, and also trying to further suppress the truth and progress, is wild. But sadly is something that you do see happen in real life. And playing this game as a full-grown adult now, rather than when I was a 6-year-old child playing it, makes me appreciate this game even more. Since we're still in the spoiler alert section of the video, let's just talk about the final boss, the ending of the game. you liberate humanity by killing God. So Square at the time, now Square Enix, were very on the nose with the critique, criticism, and just commentary that they were providing. And with how dark the story is, like I said, I think the comedic relief stuff works well because you're seeing the cycle of atonement and how the people must temporarily defeat sin by continuously sacrificing summoners, and that is just straight up cult level stuff. So the story gripping me and really providing a very good underlying message and a very interesting message on top of being very charming and having great gameplay have been things that have really hooked me as I've played through this most recent playthrough that I'm on. And you see, speaking on the gameplay that I just mentioned, I've really enjoyed grinding the game and making sure I'm heading into each important section or boss in the game at an adequate or hell even higher than average level. You see, the grind is essentially core tenet number one of a turn-based RPG or JRPG. And like I said when I played it a few years ago, I just don't believe I was fully engrossed in the experience. Whereas now, I've really been loving the experience of replaying it so far. I'd always been pretty critical of the sphere grid system, but I think a part of that was just laziness on my part as a child. I think it's really not hard to understand how a 6-year-old kid really didn't want to learn something different than the traditional leveling systems that he had been playing and basically letting them do the work for him and just level up traditionally, like Final Fantasy IX, Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door, Pokemon Emerald. Those were the games that I played the most, or the JRPGs that I played the most as a child. But that's still no reason for me to hate on the sphere grid system just for the sake of being a hater, when quite literally Lost Odyssey might very well be my second favorite JRPG ever. And it's very, very close in the running with Final Fantasy IX, and that doesn't have a traditional leveling system as they have the level caps and other things. And yeah, so for me, I just had to play this game and realize I need to stop being a hater when it comes to the sphere grid, because I've actually really enjoyed it in my most recent playthrough, with a playthrough that I'm currently on. I've also loved switching between the characters on the fly while playing currently, and being able to switch in Lulu when black magic is needed, Yuna when I need to heal, Wakka when one party member can't reach an enemy and I just need Wakka to throw the Blitzball at somebody has been fun. And being able to just decide on the fly who's best equipped to handle enemies without having to use a turn, as in other RPGs, has been just been great, and it's why I understand why the gameplay is so fun. It has been such a joy for me to run back through. I also definitely need to mention Nobuo Uematsu's work on this game doing the soundtrack, as he's just one of my favorite video game composers ever. Of course, he's worked on so many different Final Fantasy games, as recently as even Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Lost Odyssey, as I've mentioned many times, made videos about it, I mentioned it multiple times in this video, is also one of my favorite games, and he did great work on that game. So for me, I think it really does add much more immersion to the world and adds to the charm that I've mentioned so many times now of Final Fantasy X. I think going back to what I said in terms of the grind being more enjoyable in this game than other JRPGs, I think just the gambling and grinding for different types of spheres and the random encounters make it fun and almost like a gamble, since you don't know if you'll get, like I mentioned before, a mana sphere, a speed sphere. I will say I do think the linearity of this game does aid it very well, and it's also one of the reasons that I really do love it, and it's made it a lot easier for me to hop back into this game with it being linear, and I'm sure many people that are picking it up for the first time can say the same thing, you know what I mean? It makes it so much easier to hop into, and I think really it does actually make the moment that you get the airship in Xanarkand much more liberating, finally, since the world is much more opened up. And of course, I have to mention Blitzball. It's something that as a kid was arguably the coolest thing about this game. You're playing basically water polo in a giant sphere of water. It's great. And I honestly don't know why Square Enix hasn't done a spin-off with Blitzball. I feel like it could rake in a ton of money, and it's one of the reasons I think this game was so beloved back in the day. And with the fact that we've gotten Final Fantasy spin-offs, whether it is something like Stranger of Paradise or heck, even Dirge of Cerberus or Chocobo Racing, I am surprised, like I said, that we haven't gotten a spin-off that is just a Blitzball game, whether that is for mobile, PC, console. But at the same time, I shouldn't be surprised when Square Enix probably is sitting on a ton of money by not releasing a standalone Queen's Blood or Tetramaster game for mobile, PC, console, etc., and pricing it at 10 or 20 bucks, or even making it a free-to-play mobile game or free-to-play game in general. And trust me, with gacha games and microtransactions and ad revenue nowadays in games, I'm surprised we haven't gotten anything with Queen's Blood separately, as in Rebirth, that was one of the most fun parts of the game, was learning Queen's Blood and playing it. And as we kind of just wrap this up, I think for a game that costed 4 billion yen at the time, or the equivalent of $32 million back in 2001, Square certainly got their money's worth, with the game selling over 21 million copies if you combine all of the different ports of the game that have released over the years. And it was also the first Final Fantasy game to get a direct sequel, which really shows you from a business perspective, with the fact that we've gotten future sequels in the franchise, like a whole trilogy for FF13, how important this game was for a business perspective, on top of the copies sold. The cultural footprint of this game is still imprinted in the sand 25 years later, so it's not surprising that fans have called for some kind of sequel or follow-up game or remaster of some sorts, and just something more than a Switch 2 port to celebrate the 25th anniversary of this game. The dynamic between Tidus and Yuna is one of the most memorable and gut-wrenching arcs that we've seen in all of gaming, so it really is no surprise that it sits with fans to this day, including me. Do I think a remake of this game is necessary? Not really, as like I said, I do still even think the PS2 version of the game holds up very well to this day. If we did get some kind of release revolving around the game though, you know I'd be there day one, as I think whether it is a sequel, a prequel, some kind of remake, there'd be a lot of people that would be on board with that, because this is very, very much a beloved game with a great story and great gameplay that, if it was brought up to really be spruced up for modern day, a lot of people would be on board with. But like I said, it still holds up, and sometimes a classic just shouldn't be touched, and you should just let it be how it is. Regardless though, playing through this classic 25 years later has still been charming, and as I said, it still holds up and has been an absolute fun experience that I think everybody should go back to and play in the original way. Of course, if you want to play it the PS4 version, sure, PS5 you can, but to me, I think the original version still holds up and is a fantastic way to play. And I want to know down below in the comments section how you feel about FF10, any of the ports we received, the sequel, or just anything revolving around this game. Let me know how you feel about it. And if you liked the video, then I definitely appreciate if you could give it a like. And if you're new to the channel, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell, just so you can stay up to date with all of the JRPG or gaming videos that I'll have coming up in the future, whether it's retrospectives, reviews, or just kind of breakdowns and news about JRPGs and gaming. Thank you all so much for watching though, and I am out. Peace.